Pakistan is the worst country when it comes to blasphemy. In a world where this word has mostly gone extinct, it is still well and truly not only alive, but gaining momentum. Even among the Muslim countries, Pakistan is the worst. And that is saying a lot because there are a lot of underdeveloped Muslim countries in Africa and Asia. Just in the last 7 days or so, 3 more people were accused of blasphemy, and 2 of them were almost lynched by angry mobs. 2 of them were local Pakistanis who claimed to be prophets of Allah, a highly punishable crime in Pakistan, and 1 foreign Chinese national named Mr. Tian, who was helping Pakistan construct a hydroelectric dam called Dasu Dam. Bear in mind that China has invested more than $50 billion to modernize Pakistan's infrastructure by building highways, ports, and even dams, but China is soon learning the hard way that you can pour billions of dollars and modernize a country's infrastructure, but no amount of money can modernize people who want to live by the standards of a 7th century ideology like Islam. No one is safe in Pakistan, as any person you have a dispute with or you don't like can be accused of blasphemy. The Chinese media is saying that the Chinese engineer was unhappy with the local factory workers for taking extra long breaks and not working up to the standards. As Muslims are observing this month of Ramadan, where Muslims fast from dawn to dusk, and since they're doing a massive favor to the whole world by pleasing their imaginary God, they expect everyone else not only to respect that, but also bend over backwards and say, "Oh, you are fasting. Thank you very much for doing this. Is there anything else we can do for you? Do you want us to fast with you as well? Do you want us to put everything on hold so you can please your sky daddy?" Yes, this is exactly what Muslims expect the rest of us to do. In this dreaded holy month, Muslims punish and beat up anyone they see eating during the fasting hours. They force non-Muslims to shut down their shops because when Muslims see other people eating, their fragile feelings get hurt. So apparently, this Chinese engineer insulted Allah and Muhammad and consequently Muslims. Within hours, an angry mob of thousands gathered at the site and wanted to lynch the poor Chinese engineer. Thankfully, the local police intervened and flew the engineer to a police station, which, believe it or not, actually was the safest place for him. Imagine that. Just 2 days earlier, a woman who seemed intellectually challenged claimed to be another prophet of Islam, and a mob of hundreds, if not thousands, turned up at her house, and she too was almost lynched by an angry mob until a local police officer delivered a passionate speech to calm the angry mob down after assuring them that she will get what she deserves.
और आपको यकीन दिलाता हूं कि इंशाल्लाह ताला इस बालूना को कैफे करदार तक पहुंचाएगा.
And just 2 days ago, a young Muslim man barged into his local mosque and angrily told the worshippers that he is the new prophet of Islam. He got up on the mimbar, this elevated place where an imam of a mosque sits, with his shoes on. A grave form of insult because Muslims are not allowed to enter mosques with their shoes on. As usual, people got angry and called the police. Any sane person would wonder, why would a man commit one of the worst forms of blasphemy in a country like Pakistan? Surely there might be something wrong with his mental health, but no. This is Pakistan. His father immediately recorded a video where he condemned his son and assured the public that he and his entire family love their prophet. He didn't even plead insanity on behalf of his son, knowing fully that he wasn't mentally well. Yes, after his arrest, his doctor made these prescriptions available. These are serious medications for schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and seizures. But instead of pleading insanity, his father threw him under the bus because he was worried, and rightfully so, that he and the rest of his family would also become a target if they protested his innocence.
और पुलिस ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਜਾਓ ਮੇਰੇ ਘਰ ਚੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਲੈ ਜਾਓ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਬੰਦਾ ਚੰਗੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਪਿਆ ਉੱਥੇ ਥਾਣੇ ਫਿਰ ਗਏ ਆ ਮਤਲਬ ਉੱਥੇ ਉਲਮਾ ਇਕਰਾਮ ਆਏ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਬਹਿ ਕੇ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਜੀ ਮੈਂ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਤੇ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਾਨੂੰਨੀ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸਜ਼ਾ ਦਿਓ ਮੈਂ ਉਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦਾ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ.
Now, Pakistan is a vassal state of China. They cannot do anything to offend China. They forget about the Uyghur Muslims of China. When asked by a foreign journalist about the treatment of Uyghur Muslims in China, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan said this.
Prime Minister, Why are you so outspoken about Islamophobia in Europe and the United States, but totally silent about the genocide of Muslims in Western China?
We speak to them behind closed doors. China has been one of the greatest friends to us in our most difficult times. When we were really struggling, our economy was struggling, China came to our rescue. So we respect the way they are.
So basically, Allah or Muslims do not matter when it comes to money. Lucky for the Chinese engineer Mr. Tian, he is not another ordinary Pakistani to be rotting in a dirty Pakistani prison. He is a Chinese national and China takes care of its citizens. A few years ago, a drunk Chinese citizen beat the absolute crap out of Pakistani police officers. And not only the Chinese national was released within hours, but the police officers who were beaten up by him were made to apologize to him. So just like that, Pakistani authorities will not only throw their prophet under the bus, but the people who accuse Mr. Tian of blasphemy would probably be visited by men in plain clothes. Do not worry, Mr. Tian will be okay. I can assure you of that. Actually, forget about me. The Pakistani military can assure you of that. Now, why is Pakistan the worst country when it comes to getting their religious feelings heard? After all, there are so many other Muslim countries, but we never hear mobs of hundreds and thousands of people turning up and lynching people accused of blasphemy. Well, there is a bit of a history behind that. Pakistan is a proto-democracy, and it is not run by its civilian government. It is governed by its powerful military. In 1979, two major events happened in the region. The first one was the Afghan Jihad, in which Pakistan had to mobilize thousands of fighters to fight the Soviets who had invaded Afghanistan. And Pakistan was worried that they would be next. The United States and the then military dictator General Ziaul Haq decided to weaponize the jihadi sentiment in the Muslims of Pakistan and Afghanistan to have an unlimited supply of foot soldiers ready to defend the Muslim lands from the evil atheist communists. The second event was the Shia revolution in Iran, and Saudi Arabia got worried that Iran's Shia version of Islam would be exported to countries like Pakistan. So they started pouring in their petrodollars and exporting their Salafi version of Islam. The Pakistani dictator was loving it. All of a sudden, dollars were pouring in from America and Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan started radicalizing their youth with Islam. The Pakistani military saw it as killing two birds with one stone. Fight the Soviets with this new supply of jihadis, and when the war is over, they can terrorize India. At that time, they didn't realize that they were creating a Frankenstein monster. In 1986, Pakistani dictator General Ziaul Haq reinforced the already feared blasphemy laws by introducing Clause C to Blasphemy Law 295, which imposed death penalty on anyone who criticized Muhammad. This was a monumental event in the history of the blasphemy saga in Pakistan. Just to help you understand the implications, before 1986, in the preceding 60-year history of blasphemy law in Pakistan, only 14 cases of blasphemy were reported. But after 1986, the number jumped from 14 cases to, guess what, 1,500 cases of blasphemy. That is more than 10,000% increase in blasphemy cases. Since the death penalty has been added, nearly 100 people have been lynched by mobs from 1987 to 2023. When a country sanctions death for a crime and those penalties are not carried out, people take matters into their own hands. Yes, despite these 1,500 cases of blasphemy, not a single person has ever been executed in Pakistan. Why? Because Pakistan knows this is an incredibly stupid law. But at the same time, its people get angry and they think that since the government is not going to execute them, we should carry out the justice ourselves. This is why there have been so many lynchings of people accused of blasphemy since the death penalty for blasphemy was introduced in 1986. Whenever someone is lynched by a mob, instead of saying that people should not be lynched, the Pakistani media and its intellectuals say, "Oh, but he did not commit blasphemy." Another soft signal to people that If he had committed blasphemy, then it would have been justified. But since he didn't commit blasphemy, therefore the mob should not have killed the blasphemer. And there is a reason why they say that. Because if they say that blasphemer does not deserve death, then that person himself would be killed. Kind of like Pakistan's former Punjab government Salman Taseer, who was killed by his own bodyguard because he said that we need to look into our blasphemy laws. As these blasphemy cases pile up and become more frequent, chants like behead those who insult the Prophet become more and more popular. And the people who promote these chants become heroes in the eyes of the public. Other Muslim countries haven't traveled down this road, which is why Pakistan stands out as different from even other highly conservative Muslim countries. So, we know Pakistan weaponized blasphemy and radicalized their people with the hope that if Pakistan goes to war with India, they can use their radicalized people to wage jihad on India. But the Pakistani military recognized another benefit of their ever-increasing radicalized jihadi force. That was to control the political parties of Pakistan. The most vivid demonstration of this agenda was observed in 2017 when then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who was starting to show his teeth to the Pakistani military, was labeled as a blasphemer himself. In what is now called Faizabad protest, organized by TLP, yes, the highly Islamist party that popularized slogans like they threatened to overthrow the government if they did not remove the oath, which was trying to include persecuted sects of Islam like Ahmadi Muslims. After these radical mullahs mobilized thousands of people who started jumping up and down in the streets of Lahore, Karachi, Faisalabad and many other cities of Pakistan, the government caved in. And the ministers were seen sitting at the feet of Khadim Rizvi, the leader of this TLP party, assuring them that they were just as good Muslims as everyone else. Later, a video emerged of Pakistani military officials in their military uniforms giving cash envelopes to those radicals, congratulating them for defending Islam. This is how the Pakistani military put the largest political party in Pakistan in its place. TLP had proved to be a valuable asset to the Pakistani military. This radicalization also gave rise to Pakistani Taliban, who now want to overthrow the entire Pakistani setup, including the Pakistani military. These Pakistani Taliban are currently enjoying safe havens in Afghanistan under the so-called strategic asset of Pakistan, the Afghan Taliban, or as called by previous Pakistani military generals, the good Taliban. For nearly 20 years, the Pakistani military played the double game with the West, taking money from the West on the one hand and supporting the Taliban on the other. It all makes sense now. I remember the former military dictator of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, and how he used to vigorously deny the allegations of playing the double game with the West, especially after Osama bin Laden was discovered a few kilometers away from a Pakistani military headquarters in Abbottabad.
When they discovered Osama bin Laden could be living in that compound so close to military installations that nobody knew.
Yes, that I totally agree with you that it is not believable. But I personally am convinced that it is a case of negligence and not a case of complicity.
Not to mention, nearly 70,000 Pakistanis themselves were killed in terrorist attacks due to this menace of Pakistani Taliban, which was a direct result of Pakistan radicalizing their own people. Pakistan's military's own brainchild has now become a Frankenstein monster. This is how the Pakistani military weaponized Islam and blasphemy. But as long as you terrorize India, play a double game with the West, and take billions of dollars from them, it's okay. But when you are deceitful, things seldom pan out the way you had hoped for. Pakistan is a very insular country. I grew up in the 90s and I left Pakistan in the early noughties and I never saw any tourists there. My parents tell me that in the 60s and the 70s they used to see Western hippies roaming around freely and safely. But this radicalization took that away from Pakistan and it has been hurting Pakistan ever since. Firstly, no one goes to Pakistan, but if someone does have to go there for business, they are not safe. Like the Sri Lankan manager Priyantha Kumara, who was brutally lynched by a mob and then set on fire last year over, guess what? A blasphemy accusation. Pakistanis have been lynching their own people for the last 40 years or so, but now they're starting to lynch foreigners as well. People often ask me, should we go to Pakistan? I've heard it's a beautiful country. Successive Pakistani governments have invested a lot of money to advertise the beautiful mountains of northern Pakistan and the amazing coastline of southern Pakistan and the deserts of central Pakistan, yada yada yada. I always tell my Western friends, the landscape is beautiful, but people, I'm not so sure. Don't be fooled by the propaganda. Foreign tourists are often harassed in Pakistan. Just last year, an American family was harassed and groped in the highly urbanized city of Lahore. A young TikToker from America went to Pakistan and was gang raped. Now, that is not to say that every Pakistani is like that. Pakistanis are the biggest victims of this ideology. There are many Pakistanis like me who are desperately trying to fix it. I don't want the world to see that my country of birth is reduced to a country of mindless, barbaric, religious nutjobs. But until the Pakistani establishment realizes that if they want to live in the 21st century and want to be treated as such, they have to leave the 7th century ideology behind. A lot of Pakistanis watching this and might get angry and say, I'm exaggerating this because after all, they wouldn't do that. That's not true. People are capable of taking incredibly disproportionate actions against people they have had a disagreement with. We have examples of people dobbing in their neighbors to Stalin's secret police over minor disputes and getting them executed. When you're angry, in the heat of the moment, people don't care. If they feel that they've been wronged by someone, and in a dispute, almost everyone thinks that he's been wronged by the other party. The reason why most of the time we don't stab people over a minor dispute is because we think of the consequences. We know we'll have a price to pay. If people are sure that nothing will come out of it, if they stabbed someone over an argument, a lot of people would actually do it. In Pakistan, people think that if they accuse someone of blasphemy over a dispute, they will kill two birds with one stone. One, they will satisfy their vengeance, and they will also end up looking like heroes. You think I'm exaggerating? Just 2 months ago, a man was stopped by a Christian customs officer because he didn't have the appropriate paperwork. You know what he did? He immediately threatened her with blasphemy because he knew she was a Christian.
मैं करवाता हूँ, मैं ला रहा हूँ मौलाना को अभी। अरे 10 मैं ला रहा हूँ। तो इन्हें साला का झूठा मुकदमा कराएगा, उसको भी पुलिस पकड़ लिया। हमारे मारे जान से मारे पक्का। मैं मारूंगा, मार दूंगा। मैं तो पागल हूँ। मैं तो काट के फेंक दूंगा अभी। आप लोगों का यही है कि चलो ये क्रिश्चियन है, इसको हम ना तौहीन रिसालत में जलील करते हैं, तो कर दो। वो मुझे कह रहे हैं मैं आपको झूठे तौहीन रिसालत के केस में बंद करा दूंगा।
Luckily, this was filmed and hence she wasn't lynched by a mob or is spending the next 20 years of her life in a Pakistani prison. Why did he do it? I'm sure if he was watching this video, he would have said, oh, Haris is exaggerating. I wouldn't have done that. But this is exactly what he did. Because he knew he would get away with it, and get away he did. Instead of being held to account, he was just pardoned. So let me warn all of you who are thinking of going to Pakistan. Do not go there. Yes, most likely nothing will happen to you as long as you don't run into a dispute or an argument with some local Pakistani. If you have a disagreement or a dispute with some Pakistani, he could easily accuse you of blasphemy, and good luck getting out of there. Lastly, a lot of non-Pakistanis and other lipstick Muslims say that, oh, it's just Pakistan. It's got nothing to do with Islam. Wrong. Not only do we have many instances of Muhammad ordering the executions of blasphemers, but at least in one instance, he even let go of a person who took it upon himself and killed a blasphemer. Yes, behind every evil act of a radical Muslim, there is an example of Muhammad. There was a blind man who had a sex slave. Ignoring the fact that she had borne him 2 sons as his sex slave, she apparently used to abuse Muhammad. This pious sex slave owning Muslim man warned her to stop cussing out Muhammad, otherwise he will kill her. But she was probably sick and tired of Islam, the very ideology that had reduced her to a sex slave of a blind man. One day, she cussed out Muhammad, and this blind man stabbed her to death. Now, these lipstick Muslims would tell you, no, he was wrong. He should not have killed the blasphemer extrajudicially. Prophet Muhammad would have never approved of that. That's the job of a Qadi. But when the matter was brought before Muhammad, guess what happened? He didn't say to the murderer, how dare you kill the blasphemer? This is the job of a judge. He did not punish the murderer. Instead, he lets him go. If this isn't evidence of sanctioning vigilante murder of blasphemers, then what is? This story is written in Sunan Abi Dawud 4361 and Sunan Nasa'i 4070. So next time a lipstick Muslim tells you that it is forbidden in Islam to take it upon yourself and kill a blasphemer, show them this Sahih Hadith. To be fair, I must add that the later jurists of Islam recognized this bad behavior of Muhammad. Therefore, all four schools of Sunni thoughts outlawed vigilante actions against blasphemers. But the point is, Muhammad didn't. Muhammad sanctioned it. But this is not it. After radicalizing its masses in the last 40 years, Pakistan has created another monster, the monster of rebellious youth. Just 2 weeks ago, a report by Pakistan's Federal Intelligence Agency, the FIA, identified 400,000 blasphemers in Pakistan. This is a monumental number in any country, let alone a highly religiously conservative country like Pakistan.
कि इस मुल्क में आग लग जाए, ये 2-3 लोग नहीं है, ये पाकिस्तान में कोई 1-2 हजार नहीं है। FIA साइबर क्राइम की रिपोर्ट के मुताबिक जो मुझे आज दिखाई गई है, उसके मुताबिक इनकी तादाद पाकिस्तान में 4 लाख है। मैं सिर्फ इशारतन ये अर्ज कर रहा हूं, फैसल कुरैशी साहब प्राइवेट पार्ट्स पर ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मुहम्मदुर रसूलुल्लाह सय्यदा तय्यबा ताहिरा आबिदा जाहिदा ज़किया मुज़क्किया हजरत सय्यदा फातिमा का नाम लिखा हुआ है। इससे पहले हम मर क्यों नहीं गए? ये दिन देखने से पहले हमें मौत क्यों नहीं आ गई?
मैंने आज तक आपको इस तरह कमजोर नहीं देखा। हम किसी जगह पे तौहीन नहीं सुनी। हम वो बदनसीब हैं जो ये सारा कुछ देख रहे हैं। जिंदगी खराब कर दी गई है और इस मुल्क का अमन, इस मुल्क की तबाही करने के लिए इस हद तक मेरा दुश्मन गिर जाएगा।
On the one hand, they wanted to protect the religious sentiments of people, but on the other hand, they inadvertently made the youth of Pakistan hate Islam. This is what happens when you double down on people's thoughts. This is what happens when you stifle free thought. It almost always has the opposite effect. I hope that the Pakistani military has learned its lesson and it would stop weaponizing blasphemy against India or their own political parties, because at the end of the day, it is not hurting India or the West, but it is hurting Pakistan and the Pakistanis the most. I may be a fool in thinking that it could change one day, but for now, it seems like an impossible task to pull Pakistan out of the 7th century into the 21st century. If you like my video and would like to support my channel, then you can be my patron by going to patreon.com/xmuslim, or you can simply buy me a coffee.